Go ahead, Bob.
Was I saying something?
No, but you should be.
It's 7 o'clock.
Oh, it's 7 o'clock.
It's
Okay, well, welcome.
1900 hours.
Welcome to the June edition of the Tucson Macintosh User Group. For this month, we have some stuff for you, and I seem to have lost my script because there we go. Okay. Welcome, sustaining members, new members, first-time guests, dual platform users, and switchers. Free raffle tickets for the super raffle. You could win $200 Apple gift card. The winner will be picked in March of 2027, and Kurt will be taking attendance tonight, and he will fill in the raffle slips for each of the members. To be eligible, the screen name displayed must match with the record of the current TMUG membership. If we can't identify you, your name will not be placed in the raffle. Let's all celebrate National Flag Day, National Photography Day, and National Fudge Day, as well as Father's Day coming up. Of course, we will remember D-Day and all of those who sacrificed for our freedom. We will gather next on Tuesday, August 18th at the same virtual location. TMUG will be taking July off in celebration of MacStock. A recap of the Apple Worldwide Developers Conference, commonly known as WWDC, will take place tonight. In August, we will have Ask Me Anything, and then a look back at MacStock. If I'm able to get commitments from some of the speakers for future TMUG presentations, we may have a look forward. Please watch for Zoom to open a survey window. Although Zoom seems to be acting up on me, at least on me tonight, it has thrown me out, I think, 5 times so far.
And there is no survey. They changed the way they do it, and I couldn't
Okay,
get it done tonight.
okay, never mind about the survey. For those of you who have signed up for a copy of the David Pogue book, Apple, the First 50 Years, I've received the books and will take them with me to MacStock where David has promised to autograph them for us. If you have yet to pay me back for the books, I would like payment to MacStock. I intend to take the bulk of the money and spend it on hookers, booze, and cigars.
Riotous living
Anything,
and debauchery.
right. Anything left over, I'll just fritter away.
Typical user group leader.
Thank you, Steve. Um, are there any other announcements, things that I've forgotten?
Hey, Bob, I've got a question. Are you going to be at Beyond Bread this Saturday? Because if you are, I can give you a check for my book.
No,
Oh,
no,
wait a minute. That's never mind. That's Camera Club of Tucson, not T-Mug. Never mind.
okay.
But you live near me because I'm in Corona de Tucson. So,
Oh, well, we're close by then.
yeah. So I'll figure out how to pay you. And just
Okay.
disregard what I said because I'm old and I get confused. As we all do.
Well, I think there's a fair amount of gray hair uh, on call tonight.
Yeah.
Uh, are there any for sales or wanted to buy items from the floor? In that case, I'm pretty much done with the opening remarks, and we'll turn it over to Ridge for the tech update and security news. If you are ready, Ridge. And he's given me the high sign. So if I disappear and don't make it back, I think Roger's going to take over as the MC. I sure plan to be here, but you never know. Okay, take it away, Ridge.
Okay. Here we go for another month. And of course, we start, whoops, let's go back to here we go, June. Okay, we start with our software updates, and here's some of the Mac compatible software that has been updated. Probably you want to pay attention to the Chrome and Firefox updates there. And if you're running Office for Mac, that too. And we're running Zoom Workplace 705 today. And the operating system, the software updates that Apple released, you can see there for Mac OS and iOS. And the software of Apple applications, nothing so far. And how about the firmware that has been released? We got the firmware for those AirPods and the AirTag Generation 2. And the Beats headset Studio Buds, they all had firmware updates. And in beta, you can see all of this stuff is basically 26 and 27 and some 28s. And those are what's all coming that Apple is looking at right now. And here's something miscellaneous. The Kansas City Public Schools have decided to get rid of the 30,000 Windows PCs and Chromebooks. And they're going to go exclusively to Apple devices. They like Apple devices because they have an edge over the competition, being secure, durable, and reliable. And they have procured 4,500 MacBook Neos that's going to be used for the students in the 8th grade and up, and the lower grades are going to have access to the district's existing iPad and MacBook Air inventory. Here's more miscellaneous. The British government is going to introduce a ban on social media access for all users under 16 years of age. Going to take place next year. And the Prime Minister likes that move, as saying it's the right step for Britain and the best way to keep children safe online. And it's going to cover Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, etc. there, you can see. And the platforms are going to be required to stop under 16s from live streaming, including on gaming services. So to block functions that let strangers contact children. And they're going to be turned on by default for those under 17. And as far as Apple operating system goes, it's a reminder that Apple has said that Mac OS 26 Tahoe is going to be the last major Mac OS for Intel-based Macs. So Mac OS 27 is going to be compatible with Apple Silicon Macs only, the M series chips or the A18 Pro chips. And OS 27 is still going to be able to run Intel apps, and it's going to be the final major Mac OS release to include Rosetta 2. OS 26 is going to work on watches that have the S9 and S10 chips from 2023 to 2025, and it's not going to work on watch series 6, 7, 8 and the original Ultra. OS 27 is going to work on Macs with Apple Silicon from 2020. That's the M1, M2, and so forth, and later. And it's going to include the MacBook Neo. And there are some online reports of problems with Mac OS 27 beta, such as some RAID enclosures that no longer work, and some are proud an inability to select alternate partitions or drives from which to boot. Mac OS 26.4 Tahoe broke Time Machine networking backups to network drives. And Apple's original networking protocol, AFP, has been killed in Mac OS 27, and that makes Time Machine devices no longer function. And when Mac OS 27 is installed, during that installation, Rosetta 2 is going to be removed if the install finds it. As far as Microsoft goes, starting next month, Microsoft is going to disable almost all functionality for all Microsoft Office users on Mac OS 11 Big Sur. It's also going to put Office 2019, 2021, and 365 subscribers into read-only mode for all users, regardless of the operating system. And it's also bricking its mobile apps on devices running iPad OS 16 and iOS 16 or earlier. And in this mode, you can view and print, but you cannot edit, save, or create new at all. And Macworld Online reports that Microsoft is going to end support for Office on older Apple operating systems. And if you're running outdated Mac OS, iOS, or iPad OS versions, you will enter reduced functionality mode where you cannot edit, save, or create. And to restore full functionality, Apple device users supposed to update to Mac OS 12 Monterey, iOS 17 or iPad OS 17 or later. The view-only conversion is a scheduled remote degradation of perpetually licensed Microsoft Office software for Mac OS and iOS. That's when a license validation certificate that's used by Office expires. And people who bought one-time purchases of Office Home and Student 2019 at $149 or so came with a copy that said you do not have an upgrade option. And it means if you plan to upgrade to the major next release, you're going to have to buy it at full price. To restore full functionality, you've got to update to Mac OS 12 Monterey, iOS 17 or iPad OS 17 or later, or use web-based Office apps. But there is good news. If you're running LibreOffice, it's a free cross-platform alternative. It's with continuing support that can open and save documents in the Office file formats, including Office Open XML formats. And as far as rumors go, MacBook Pro computers may be closer to having OLED displays now that Samsung Display reports it has achieved OLED production yields above 90% on its Generation 8.6 OLED production line. And they're getting sometimes a 95% yield sometimes. And these displays may be used in future 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro models. Now, there's a Chinese leaker who is known as Instant Digital. He said recently that Apple's first touch screen MacBook is now 100% confirmed. And he appears to have gotten that insider information from sources in the supply chain. According to supply chain suggestions, the much rumored iPhone Fold is now said to be officially announced in September this year, but it's not going to ship until sometime next year. These items are rumored to be expected later this year. And the one I'm looking for is the Mac Studio. And maybe an updated Mac Mini there. And perhaps an iMac to replace our old 27-inch iMac. So far, thanks for your attention, and now we'll turn to items of security interest for the month. As far as software that had security fixes, Chrome, Google had 74 security fixes in Chrome, and that's the latest version, 149 and then 102 to 103. And Mozilla had security fixes to report for Firefox 150 8.0.3. And Apple didn't report any security fixes in their software for this to report this month. And Apple's app store is supposed to be pretty secure. And they continue to paint the App Store as a safe and trusted place, even though fraudulent or deceptive apps sometimes make it past Apple's review. But last year, Apple says its review team rejected over 2 million submissions, and that included over 1.2 million new apps and nearly 800,000 pending app updates for failing to adhere to the review guidelines. Bad actors continue to evolve their methods, and Apple says it's continually improving its multi-layered defenses, combining humans and advanced machine learning to attempt to detect and prevent malicious activity. And they also mentioned that the review process prevented over $2.2 billion in fraudulent transactions last year. And macOS Tahoe security features. There's a scam call screening that's going to answer calls from unknown numbers and ask the caller for name and reason. And they now have locked apps that require your Face ID, Touch RT, or passcode to open them. And when that's enabled, you're going to need to authenticate after clicking on those apps. And we talked about this last month. Macworld Online likes Norton 360 as having very good features. It's only $40 for the first year. As far as privacy goes, they liked Surfshark 1. $51 for 15 months. And Apple is still updating XProtect and Gatekeeper. And it's still good security practice to install updated applications only through official websites or built-in update systems, and to avoid installers distributed through ads to third-party download sites, or email links or unsolicited messages. And you're always supposed to verify that the latest versions of the software you're using are, in fact, the latest versions. Cybercrime. There's a new InfoStealer variant which targets macOS users by spoofing Apple, Microsoft, and Google, and then gets to work searching for victims' password managers so it can steal all the credentials and access cryptocurrency wallets. That malware abuses AppleScript and legitimate Mac OS system processes to hide its activity and avoid traditional malware scanning tools. And the updated S-Hub Stealer variant is called Reaper, and it uses Mac OS script editor pre-populated with the malicious payload to execute the malware, according to research engineer who documented the attack in a recent blog. But unlike earlier S-Hub versions and similar Mac OS Stealer campaigns that rely on click, fix, social engineering tactics to trick the user into pasting a script editor command into Apple's terminal command line interface, Reaper bypasses terminal altogether and therefore defeats defenses Apple has added to Tahoe 26.4. Google has accidentally leaked details about an unfixed issue in Chromium that keeps JavaScript running in the background even when the browser is closed, allowing remote code execution on the device. Potential exploitation scenarios include using compromised browsers to launch distributed denial of service attacks, to launch proxying malicious traffic and arbitrarily redirecting traffic to target sites. The issue impacts all Chromium-based browsers, including Chrome, Edge, Brave, Opera, Vivaldi, and Arc. Hopefully, Google is already busy fixing on the situation. News outlets across the country are reporting on a new scam in which hackers use fake captures to steal people's identity and financial info, accessing passwords to websites, crypto wallets, and more. It's insidious because victims unwittingly type in commands to install the malware themselves. And once it's installed, the criminals have the keys to your computer and can even sell your information to others. And here's how the scam plays out. It starts when you land on a website and get a verify you are human or other captcha prompt. It's what comes next that identifies the scam. A message pops up saying the captcha system failed and you need to run some commands to resolve the problem. First, you may be asked to click a fix it or how to fix button, which is where the name ClickFix comes from. Unfortunately, this copies malware code onto your clipboard, but it doesn't install it. It's what victims unknowingly do next that installs the malware. Victims who click the fix button then get instructions to key in a series of commands, and it's this step that installs the malware. On a Mac, they may ask to type in command space, and that opens a Spotlight.app. Then they are told to type in terminal and press enter, and that opens up the terminal app and an interface which code can be entered into the system. And after that, they're instructed to type Command V, which pastes the malware code that's already installed. And then you're asked you to press return, and that starts running the malware. And because you installed the code yourself, antivirus system don't necessarily catch it. Real captchas will never ask people to fix anything with keystrokes. So if you get instructions to click on a button afterwards, return to a safe site immediately and disconnect from the internet by turning off your Wi-Fi or unplugging. You may have to move to a clean device to change passwords to important accounts. And if you already installed the trusted antivirus program, scan your original device while it's disconnected from the internet. And you're supposed to monitor your bank and credit card accounts for any unexpected stuff. The best protection is always being alert and proactive, and that includes installing trusted antivirus programs in the event your computer gets infected. You can also use multi-factor authentication on all your sensitive accounts so that even if hackers get access to your passwords, they can't necessarily access your accounts. And so far, thanks for your attention. In this part of my program, I say stay safe, which means you gotta stay alert while you're online. And that's it for me today. So now I'll hit escape.
Thanks, Ridge.
There you go.
Thank you, Ridge.
You bet.
All right, now we're going to turn over to Chris Wesselman, who has a short presentation about how accessibility will be enhanced with AI in OS 27. Now, Chris has had his eyeballs taken out, cleaned, and put back in today, so he may not be seeing quite as well as he normally does. But let's bear with him and see what he has to say. Chris, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. I already put a link to a press release, which I'll explain here, in the chat. Every year, I was aware of this for the first time this year. There is an event called the Global Accessibilities Awareness Day, which is shortened to GLAD, GAAD. And Apple does something very out of character. They went ahead and issued a press release on all of the new accessibility stuff in the OS 27s ahead of WWDC, which is pretty radical, but it's the world event for accessibility. So for folks who are interested, I'd recommend you click on that link and you can go through and read all the stuff in paragraph form. It's probably too long to get into tonight, and honestly, we won't be seeing it till September anyway. The second point I would like to make is relative to agentic computing versus chatbots. And this was a big theme in WWDC. I'm sure Tony will talk about it. But essentially, what we're looking forward to is being able to ask the Siri or Siri AI, as the case may be, help me improve the contrast on my screen, or help me because I need to adjust the touch on my iPad, or I'm having trouble connecting my hearing aids. And this may or may not be through the Apple Support app, but Apple's been working on some AI to go with that AI support chat. So we'll look forward to that. And we could get into more about the whole agentic computer thing, but I'll turn it over to Tony and let him cover what he wants to on that, and we can always say more later. So, Bob, should we go to Tony next?
Yes, we will. Thank you, Chris. And your eyes look nice and clean now. So
Well, they haven't gotten any worse, which is good.
that's good. All right, Tony, what do you got for us? I think you might be muted, Tony.
Okay, here we go. So the advertising before the event called it All Systems Glow, kind of like All Systems Go. And I think one of the things I will say is this was a very different feel to the event. And they really only talked about three things, maybe four overall. But first thing is all new Siri. And they're calling it Siri AI now. So it's a new version of Siri with Apple Intelligence. So Apple Intelligence capabilities in apps. And they also talked about trust and safety, and it was focused on, at least the presentation, on child safety protections. So, you've seen these before. Last year, I think it was like an hour and 45 minutes that they talked. This year, it was about an hour and 15 minutes. They essentially had a 5-minute intro where Craig Federini introduced, okay, it's going to be called iOS. Everything is going to be OS number 27. So they kind of showed this picture: iOS, iPad OS, watch OS, TV OS, Vision OS, Mac OS, and then the number 27. So kind of as expected, we'll have unified numbering from now on. So every year there'll be a new number for the upcoming year. They spent a total of 11 minutes on platform improvements, and some of those were the things about the accessibility, and some of them are fixes. I'll talk a little bit about that. They spent 10 minutes on trust and safety, and then they spent the majority of the time on Apple Intelligence and Siri. One of the things you'll notice here is they did not talk about any specific OS or show anything new about a specific OS. It was all related to all the OSs will get this. For this example, we're going to demo it on iOS. For this example, we'll demo it on Mac OS. They showed a couple things that were Vision OS, but they were really more focused on, here are features that we're going to have across all of our devices. So the name of the new OS is Golden Gate, and this was one of the pictures I captured out of the keynote. So this was done during the introduction by Craig Federini. And so it will now be OS Golden Gate. I'm sure some image like this will be available as backgrounds. I haven't seen the new ones in the beta yet. So platform improvements. Like I said, they only spent a few minutes on this. I have a link in here for people to go. Adam Angst from Tidbits used his AIs to get text recognition on all of these items that they put on the screen, and then he combined and categorized them in his presentation on his site. And I think that's probably the better way to analyze this than me trying to go through and talk about all of these different items. But they're saying, yeah, we realized there were a bunch of things in when we switched everything over to liquid glass that we didn't really do as well as we would like to. And so they made a lot of improvements and refinements. They talked a lot about refinements to liquid glass. They're going to make a new slider essentially. In this window, you can see on the right-hand side there how there's very little showing behind in the top there. You can barely tell that there's color underneath that. So they're going to make it so that it really does stand out. You can see they added color back in. So the thing that's selected is now purple instead of kind of an off gray. So it's just like, well, which gray is that? The toolbars and sidebars are coming back. They will have more color again in the toolbar and sidebar so you can tell what the active window is. Someone realized, well, I look at the screen, I can't even tell which window to draw my eye to. So they're going to put color back into the sidebar so you can tell which window is active. They're making icons now more 3D and using glass effects inside the icons. They did a lot of optimization. I think they gave 3 or 4 different examples of, hey, it's 70% faster to to bring your photos up. It's 30% faster to launch a new email. So they talked a lot about making things more responsive and rebuilding and re-architecting things to make them faster. They rebuilt search from the ground up and they re-architected the index. So maybe now Spotlight will be useful again. Couple other things they showed in here. Maybe not as much interest to a full Mac user group, but iCloud albums can now be shared with Android and Windows devices. So your family doesn't have to be on Mac OS or iOS to be able to do shared albums. And that will also now include full resolution images, even with Windows and Android. AirPods, they're going to allow you to create your own equalization curves. So I feel like this is kind of a user selection based on the hearing capabilities that they added in to be able to use your AirPods as hearing aids. This now allows individuals who don't necessarily need hearing aids to reset how they listen to music, right? I really like bass, so turn up the bass, or I need help with voices with podcasts, so turn up low and mid range. So I think that custom equalizer is kind of an outgrowth of some of the accessibility options that they did. They showed here on an Apple Vision Pro how you can take panorama images and convert them into spatial scenes. So they're using their AI to extract the depth information out of panoramas and being able to use the spatial scenes. That feature comes up later in Photos. I'll talk about that in terms of reframing later. They also have done a lot more with maps. So this is now kind of what the flyover looks like. So they used aerial photography and they map it onto the buildings. They're using height qualities of the building. You can kind of tell, that truck down there, I guess it's a van, looks a little funny. It looks kind of like there's a tree in the back of it. So you can see some weirdnesses with this, but this is definitely a much better visual rendering in 3D than what they had previously. And it sounds like they've done a lot of city flyovers with aerial photography to be able to do more of these renderings. Okay, on to trust and safety. And this is where they really added child safety features and how their existing system supports that and how iOS 27 or the OS 27 series will support it. They're working with the American Association of Pediatrics, who has a system called the Family Media Plan, and it's making recommendations, age-based recommendations for families, and kind of also um, so that's a starting point for you, but the parents have control over, okay, yeah, I know it recommends only a half an hour, but I think my kid is okay with 45 minutes or an hour of this type of information. So they said the first thing you have to do is make sure you have a child account, and they said if you've created an adult account for your child, there is a way to convert it to a child account. And there were 4 areas they talked about. And the idea here is the the OS allows the parent to answer these 4 questions for their kid. You know, what kids can see, who kids can talk to, when kids have access, and how parents can guide kids. So I grabbed a couple of the pictures. So the first thing is allowed apps. So you can say which apps are allowed, and apps you don't allow will be blocked until you approve, so the kid can request an app and then you can approve it or disapprove it. They've now added this feature to websites. So, hey, you have, a parent or guardian needs to give you permission to browse to a specific website. They have some websites that are allowed. They have recommendations from the American Association of Pediatrics on what to allow and what not to allow, but then you can add things based on your specific child. The one in the upper right is showing, you can limit who kids can talk to, right? So the contacts might be only the parents. You could add grandparents in. You can add trusted friends. So it allows you to control. They can't just get random messages from people and initiate conversations with random people, and they can ask for permission to contact a person. They're identifying, now this is a feature that already existed, but they highlighted this of, the AI identifies the image may contain nudity. Do you want to really look at this? If you feel uncomfortable, there are things you can do to get help, and it has a button below this to get help. Or they can select to look at it. And the parents get information on if the kids bypass this or not, if they're under 13. The controls are a little bit different if the child is a teenager, but again, under parental control. So I think this one, and they added blood and gore as another thing that it will identify so that, violent movies or things like that, they might get an image with a meme with something in it that's has a lot of blood in it, violent imagery. So it'll be able to identify that and give them something similar. Hey, if you feel uncomfortable, here's how you can get some help. You can ask your parents, or you can, do these other things to get help. Time allowance. So they're improving how they do time allowances. And so you can set for entertainment apps, you can set a limit for all entertainment, for all games, and for social media. And it starts with the recommendation. It tells you, hey, you're within the general guidance. How much time do you want? But you can see here the parent can allocate more or less time to different things. Like they could say, oh, yeah, you could normally do 3 hours, 1 hour of each, but the parent could change it of, hey, you get a total of 3 hours, but I really only want half an hour of social media. And then on the right-hand side, it shows the tools that the parents have of, how much time are the kids using the device and which app is being used the most. Hey, they spend an hour and 20 minutes in Apple Music. 46 minutes on Apple TV, 15 minutes on Wikipedia. They use the calculator for something. So you can kind of see what they're using and how they're using it. And so that kind of covers, okay, how, what kids can see, who they can talk to, when kids have access, and how parents can help guide kids. So it helps with this. It helps them get help. It looks like there's some good features, and I'm sure that kids will be able to figure out how to bypass them very quickly. But I think it's being one of the things with Apple doing it across all the OSs, that hour allocation of entertainment doesn't mean, oh, well, I used up the hour on my phone. Now I can go use an hour on the iPad. If the iPad is under their account, it's still within that shared time allowance. So you just have to be aware this is total time. They also talked about being able to control apps during specific hours. So you can set, during the school day, you're only allowed to use messages to contact your parents. And so you can set more limitations for during school hours versus after school hours. You can set a different number of hours for weekend versus weekdays. So on to Apple Intelligence, where they spent a lot of time. And I think I didn't capture as much information about everything that they showed. I think a lot of these were showed for developers to see, but I would like to walk through. So what they've done, they've created what they now call Apple Foundation models. I think they just called it Apple AI models before. So they worked with Google and the Google Gemini team to create these Apple Foundation models. So it's not specifically using Google Gemini, but it's using they worked with the Google team on creating models that they can use on device and with private cloud compute, which private cloud compute was introduced, I think, last year or the year before, where they talked about being able to take the AI context and run it on a computer without being able to decrypt the data or send it to anyone else. And so this shows kind of in the center, they're saying of the picture, they're showing this is a personal intelligence. It has access to all of your devices, and so they're kind of showing the 5 different devices there: the watch, the phone, your computer, a Vision Pro, and an iPad. And so it's personal. And then they're saying the foundation models go around that and can do things with images, voice, and text. It is orchestrated across the system. So it knows, like, it has access to your internal emails on device and access to your calendar and access to your, message history. It has world knowledge like other AIs. It has the capability to perform actions, and they're allowing the AI to do what they call on-screen awareness, and I'll show an example of that. And that's the type of thing where you can ask the AI, "Hey, what is this a picture of?" or "What am I seeing on the screen?" And it will use its information of world knowledge and your context to be able to identify what something is on the screen. And then overall system-wide, there's a new Siri application. And so the Siri application allows you to access a lot of this information all at once. Siri is now much more conversational, like you're used to using. We've had the conversations about GPT and other agents where you make conversations with them. There's now a Siri app where on all of your devices, you'll be able to see the conversations you've had with Siri, and you can go, "Hey, I want to continue this previous conversation I had. I want to give you more information or continue it." And they're now allowing apps access to request access to the world knowledge and actions and getting things on screen. Which, as a developer conference, this was, how can you do this in your apps? So Siri is now Siri AI. It's much more like having a conversation. Better dictation capabilities. It's a dedicated app, and you can revisit existing conversations. It gets to your other devices by syncing through iCloud. One of the things I'll I'll say here is they did a good job of showing, hey, this is what people call agentic AI. It can do things for you, but it's very good about, hey, you asked me to do this. Here's the two pictures that I'm going to add. Do you want me to do that or not? So even though it's agentic, you still have control over the final. It's more like an assistant saying, "Hey, here's what you asked me to do, or is this really what you want?" And so this was an example of finding two photos from a previous vacation. Um, Apparently there were a bunch of cow pictures, and he's like, "Yeah, the whole family doesn't need to see the 30 cow pictures." It found these two pictures that had the whole family in them, and it's like, "Okay, let's add that to the family photo album." And he was able to click continue and then add them. So Siri now will let you, so this is kind of some of the examples they were giving. You're going to be able to change the pace of the voice and the expressivity to get a voice that you like and that's easy for you to understand. They still have the choices of the accent that you can pick from. And so this will be allowing you to be easier to understand what Siri's saying. Um, this middle one, it's saying, "Hey, choose a name that rhymes so people don't get confused. Here's some options from Rico to Nico or Chico or Pico. Would you like to suggest one of these to the group?" And then you can say yes or no. So it's kind of like identifying, looking in this conversation, what's going on. Here's my suggestion for what you could do. It's also showing in the upper right, they're adding a Siri app that is accessible on the watch. I'm sure it'll have more limited capabilities and it'll probably run a lot of its stuff on a attached phone, but it will have at least some capabilities directly on the watch. They're showing this lower left is showing it in Apple Vision Pro. You can put a Siri that you can talk to. This is kind of the Siri icon. And so when you turn, all you have to do in the Vision Pro now is look at that icon and then start talking, and it'll assume that you want to talk to Siri. And so it'll continue a conversation with Siri. This middle bottom one, this is the example. Hey, this looks like what's on the screen here is what they asked. And it said, oh, this appears to be a cricket ball, which is made of this this is what it found on a search. So much better than the previous Siri interactions. Again, these are all demos. They've been saying for the past 2 years they're going to have improved Apple Intelligence. The demos they did this year look a lot closer to what I'm seeing in the other AI systems. If these are really mostly occurring on device, this is a lot more impressive than what they showed off last year. They've definitely done a lot of work on the AI engine that they have. This one on the right, it's showing, hey, I need to send an email to talk to my boss about this customer presentation. Here's what I'd like to tell them. And it's automatically creating the email and showing you what it is and saying, hey, this is what I'm going to mention. But again, it's putting the email in front of you and then saying, hey, do you want to edit or send, or no, you want to start over? Cancel this. So I know they've had some of these things working, being able to rewrite emails, being able to do some of those things, but it looks like it's now much better overall system-wide integrated into everything that you're able to do with Siri. So they gave some examples here now of Apple applications using AI. So in Safari, it says, hey, everyone's horrible at looking at how they do their tabs. So everyone has, 100 tabs and they haven't looked at anything. They had a way to just say, okay, hey, organize these tabs by topic. And so it kind of grouped them together. There were some tabs for someone taking a trip and doing some research. And then it kind of put them into tab groups. And it said, hey, do you want me to leave them that way and create tab groups for you? Or do you just want me to go back and put them all into, you have 100 tabs that you're looking at in Safari? It had a way for This is the picture on the right. Notify me. Hey, Safari, you keep looking at this website. What are you looking for on this website? And you can say, hey, when registration opens, this was like for tickets for something. Um, and it says check daily at 10 a.m. Notify me when registration opens. So now Safari will look at that website and it will pop up a notification saying, hey, registration is now open. And if you don't look at that, it will include it into an email to you to say, hey, you asked for me to notify you when registration opens. Registration on that website's now open. They also had something, this is kind of what I would call no code creation. Describe an extension that you want, or an example here of, hey, when I leave work, I want to message Pedro that I'm on my way and send my ETA. So they essentially said that, and it created a shortcut that said, this is what I'm going to do. So when your device notifies me, your phone notifies me that you're leaving your location called work, it's going to create a message to your contact named Pedro, which in this case, I think it was their husband. And it's going to say, hey, I'm on my way, and include, my ETA is such and such based on the traffic and everything. So then it would do this every time they left work. In passwords, they showed automatically fixing bad passwords. Hey, these passwords were found in a password breach, and it's able to go through and identify how to change the password and automatically update the password used with a good password in the password app. Not sure how much I would trust it to do that yet at this point. Communications, it'll make suggestions for what to say to people or what things you need to respond to. And they gave an example of, oh, you're on the phone, you called the airline, and it identifies that you have a reservation with the airline and you called the airline help desk. So it'll display directly on the screen, here's your reservation code for the airline that you're talking to right now. And then this was describe a shortcut. So a lot of things, I think this describe an extension or describe a shortcut, it's starting to be a lot better about putting together pieces that already exist to make custom things that you want your computer to do for you, right? Hey, every time I leave work, I forget to text my wife that I'm leaving. Okay, when I leave work, automatically put that text together and it'll pop up and say, hey, you told me to send this. Here's what I'm going to send to your wife if you say okay. So they also showed some of the features here for images and photos. So they have 3 new tools, and the icon for those tools is that Apple Intelligence icon, which is kind of like two overlapping circles that are kind of squished. So these will be available in Image Playground and Photos. So they have Cleanup, which is going to be much better at identifying extra items. Like, hey, there's a bunch of balloons in this picture and I don't want them all there. I can clean them up and remove them from an image. Extend is to allow you to kind of recenter an image, or hey, I really wish it was just a little bit further to the right or left, and it will use AI to then generate the outer edge of that image to regenerate what it thinks should be there. And then reframe. This is now what they said, hey, do you wish that you had kneeled down to take that picture so you had the picture with their face looking straight on instead of you looking down on them? Or you have something over the back of someone's head and you don't want to clean it up because you really want it in the picture, but you want it to be off to the side instead. So that'll let you essentially reposition the camera. Where was the camera when I took this image to some level? And then because reframing and moving the camera around means it would have seen different parts, it then uses the extend to refill in the outside edges of the image. It was a pretty impressive demo. They did warn and say, hey, there will be daily usage limits for this for normal people. It will be increased if you have an iCloud Plus subscription. This is the same as other AIs where they say, hey, you have a certain number of tokens you can use per day, so there will be daily usage limits and increase with cloud. They have said there's base models, which all current devices that support Apple AI, and then there's advanced models, and the advanced models essentially require more memory and larger. That'll run on the iPhone Air and iPhone 17 Pro, iPad with M4 and later, and Macs with M3 and later that have at least 12 gigabytes of RAM. So then this was their overall, hey, what does Apple Intelligence do? I didn't talk about this. I talked about adding Apple Intelligence to the home. Hey, identifying what's happening at your house. Hey, someone left a package on your front porch. It matching it up with your other information. It looks like it's that UPS package you were waiting for. Um, and you can do other things with Apple Intelligence in home like that. The reframing showing, changing how you look at a picture, um, doing visual intelligence across platforms, password upgrades, dedicated Siri app, a Siri mode in the camera where you can ask, and this is already there, of being able to recognize text on the screen and identify items that are in the images. So which devices are going to be supported? They didn't specifically say anything about the Apple Vision Pro, but I'm assuming that both Apple Vision Pros will be supported. So iOS, it's all devices of iPhone 11 and later, so they aren't dropping any devices between OS 26 and OS 27. iPad OS, they are dropping devices, so iPad Pro from 2020 and later, iPad Air 4 and newer, iPad Mini 6 and 7, and then iPad 10 and 11. Mac OS is all Apple Silicon based Macs. So they're dropping support for any of the Intel based Macs that they had last year. They had a couple models last year that were supported, and they have said that this OS will be the last year that they run Rosetta 2. And it will, by default, it's going to uninstall Rosetta and only reinstall it if you need it for a specific application that you app launch. So just be aware that if you are using any Intel application still, you will have a hiccup when you install the new Mac OS that'll uninstall Rosetta 2 and you'll have to have it reinstalled. So if you know you're using an Intel application, make sure that you launch that pretty quickly after you install the OS. WatchOS, they dropped quite a few devices. They've said that they're only going to support Ultra 2 and 3, and then Series 9, 10, and 11, and SE third generation. And then I included some links here, and I'll add that link for the accessibility that Chris put into the chat before I post these notes. Are there any questions about things or comments about the agentic nature of the AI that they introduced?
I have a comment, and that is for a long time now, I've been trying to say the S lady instead of her name and tripping other people up or tripping other people's machines up. I guess now the politically correct term for her is SAI, and we should probably try to do that when we're online so other people's equipment doesn't say, what do you want? What do you want me to do? But I think there's going to be a lot of good stuff, and we'll be, I'm sure, revisiting some of this stuff as it goes along. The other thing I wanted to say was uh, Chris talked about accessibility items. Now, remember, accessibility can have stuff for you, even if you don't have a special license plate on your car. Melissa said in the chat that her dad is enjoying his new AirPods Pro 3 as hearing aids. So there's always something in there that might work for you. So there's a lot of stuff there, and I think we're going to have Chris in future months bring some of that stuff to the fore. Are there any other questions for Tony about what he's presented this evening?
I have a question. Tony, did they say when Siri AI is going to be available in beta? Notice the first beta doesn't have anything on it.
They did not. They said it'll be available in beta. So I have a feeling the OSs will be released in the September timeframe, just based on the history of the past, I don't know, 6, 7 years. So sometime in September or early October, depending on when they announce the new devices, the OS will come out. I have a feeling that they will have a lot of these Apple Intelligence features are already in, but I don't know when they will have the SAI application coming out. I expect they may launch it with the OS and call it a beta, but I didn't get a good feel, and there wasn't a it will be out when the OS is out. They really said it'll
Like the
be
last
beta.
one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they were very non-committal. It feels like they have spent a lot more time over the past year actually working on this. When, it feels like there's a couple teams at Apple that were told, no, you're not doing anything else. You're going to continue working on getting SAI working, and we need it to really work. Right. The fact that they teamed up with Google to work on their foundation models tells me they were having trouble with what they were seeing internally.
Have you heard anything about them opening up the Mac OS and iCloud to MCP servers that other AI agents can utilize Mac stuff?
Um, so what they said initially is it's not going to be available in Europe because they don't want to deal with other agents having access to all the same information that they do.
Okay.
So I don't they did say that they would allow you to use, pick your favorite agent to work with, as well. So I do think there will be an option to select an agent to work with, but I don't know that it will get the full context that the Apple system gets.
Okay. It'll be interesting to see. I could also see a class action on the watch stuff. 3 years is not long enough for support before they drop watches.
Yeah, it was actually kind of surprising to me that they only went back 3 years. And they originally hadn't even during the keynote, they only said Series 10 and 11. And when they actually came out with the press release, it said Series 9, 10, and 11. So um, there may still be a little bit of wiggle room there.
All will be revealed.
And as we have said in the past, listen to Roger before updating to your new Mac OS. He generally says you need to wait until Mac OS XX.3 before updating. And I think that's good information, and
Yeah.
it probably will bear out in the future as well. But if everything is just wonderful and all flowers and rainbows on OS 27.1, he might tell you that, at his lunch with Go for Lunch meetings on Tuesdays at noon.
And the initial response from beta testers is that this is a very stable beta release, so could be sooner this year.
I've only had one crash all week, so I'm surprised.
Good. Good. If there's nothing else, then we can get on to the part that you're all waiting for, which is the door prize. I'm going to ask Tony to pick a number between 1 and 26 by first muting his microphone, asking his SAI to pick a number between 1 and 26.
$25.
25, Karen Liptak. Is Karen a T-Mug member?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here. I'm a member.
Wonderful, wonderful, Karen.
Yes, great.
You are the winner of the monthly door prize, and I will send you a Apple gift card sometime tomorrow,
Thank
and it'll
you.
come in email.
Yay,
Thank you
Karen!
Thank you for your support and being a valued member.
Thank you.
Boy, does it pay off attending these meetings.
Thank you for your endorsement, Kevin.
I didn't say that.
You didn't. Okay, who said
It was
it?
Steve.
Whoever
was
said
Steve.
it?
Oh, Steve.
Hmm.
Oh, it's Steve.
Yeah, I was imitating Kevin's voice.
Well,
Okay.
Did you use Siri AI?
I did.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a good evening. Drive safely on your way home tonight,
Yes.
and see us in 2 months because we're going to be at MacStock next month, or at least Roger and I will be there. If you would like to join us at MacStock, there is a $50 off gift coupon. All the speakers have one. The one I know off the top of my head is Mac Geek Gab. So if you're going to buy a ticket, put in that Mac Geek Gab as your coupon code and get $50 off. So now let's see, it's still 92 degrees out here in Vail. So time to go check the thermostat.
Right.
We'll see you all again in August. Good
Night,
night,
everyone.
everybody.
Have a great
everyone.
Mac stock.
Let's go,
Wish you could be
Toto.
there.
Yeah, me too. I'm close. I'm closer this year.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.